It's quite a pedigree that you have. And, we've talked 2 years ago. And back then, we really talked about some of the key things you teach for people who are getting into the workplace and trying to use these skills. But I'd be very curious to going towards your origin story, going into the beginnings and seeing how did you find yourself being in a position where you're actually coaching people in careers? Because from what I remember, you had a background in HR and you kind of started transitioning out, correct?
I was leading the human resources department at a technology company, and I was hugely passionate about what I was doing. I was working directly with the CEO, building out the company culture. I had my hands in every single hiring process, every single compensation conversation, promotion conversation. And with my psychology background, I was able to see very clear patterns of what led people to be successful in landing a job or landing a promotion versus what would turn executives off. What would lead someone who is actually talented to be left in the dust? And I thought, this is too important to not share. I looked online at the time, and a lot of the YouTube channels and the articles out there were repeating things that we had been seeing for decades. And I saw that it needed to change. The world had changed, technology had evolved, workplaces had evolved, and they also were a little bit stale, a little bit boring. I like to infuse a bit of cheekiness into what I do. So I thought, all right, let's make this a little bit interesting and let's make it extremely specific. So I started putting out content on YouTube under the title Self Made Millennial, and people really resonated with it. And even when I had a small following, the number of success stories that I was getting was pretty outsized. And so it really snowballed from there.
I love that. And, you really started with having already an excitement for a passion that was very specific in the skill set. One of the things that I think I subconsciously mention a lot in my podcast is I almost find that for somebody to go out there and build their own brand, you went on YouTube and you started sharing about a lot of the things you worked on the job and you were able to translate into something that's very valuable for the masses. How important do you think it was, the fact that you worked in a career before going on your own to build your own brand?
It made all the difference. I'll just talk about my situation, but one thing that I've realized as I've also interviewed and hired other career coaches to work for me or all of that, one thing I've realized is I was able to see the job market at scale. So a lot of folks who go into career coaching, they have done several really successful job searches, and maybe they've hired a few people even once they've gotten to those companies. So their sample size is maybe, kind of small. My sample size is at the thousands. And so when people look at me and my expertise, they go, how did you gain so much expertise so quickly in your career? First of all, I got promoted very quickly in my career. So I got exposed to a tremendous amount of kind of backroom conversations that people wait decades in their career to see. And so while, the density of my career experience was so incredible, and then the quantity, the scale that I was able to see all of this at really made it so I had tremendous confidence where when I was giving people advice, it wasn't because I had a feeling that this is the way it was or this is the way I did it, so you should do it too this way. No, it was because of I have, 1,000 data points that point to this being the best possible solution. And so that has really carried me to be so confident in what I do.
Jeez. I think that's something that's so underrated. And, for me, I repeat that because I look at the kinds of experiences I've had in the workplaces where it's almost like on the back of that job, because they already had the scale, because they already had the volume, I was able to accelerate my learning and be exposed to so many things. And I find that's often underrated, underappreciated. And I think I have a little bit of a pet peeve when I see somebody going in coaching where they've had zero experience, they haven't gotten their feet as wet. And I can appreciate, the zero to hero journey of going straight into entrepreneurship. But for some reason, I kind of have a bias towards preferring the people that have had a chance to get into this accelerated learning space, get that experience around the belt, and then go out there. And like you said, you have data points. It's not just your intuition or your gut feeling or your, what would you call that when it's anecdotal data you have like scalable, statistically significant data, which I find is so rare to find oftentimes when you're trying to find a consistent way to progress. There's not a lot of people that have the same pedigree as you in your niche, right?
I would say that there's definitely people who have a talent acquisition or HR background who could claim the same thing, and I think that that's important to me. I love people in all aspects of this niche. Those are the people who I really connect with, because we're not speaking from a gut place. We're speaking from here's what's happening. Here's the actual truth of the matter. Whether or not anyone agrees with it, it is the truth. And being able to see that has been so enlightening.
All right. This is kind of like the first real point and the meat I wanted to get from this conversation is just, okay, you have something you're passionate about. You found the best way to be exposed to as much of that industry, that niche, through an organization, through employment, and you have this qualification into, okay, I have enough experience. I can go out there and teach. You went out there and started a YouTube channel. Now, how much did you do research into knowing like YouTube is the place I'm going to start? How much were you like, I needed the perfect video? What was that balance that got you started on that channel, and why that channel specifically?
I chose YouTube for several reasons. First, it's the hardest social media channel to do. And I guess we could debate that, but I mean, there's the visuals, there's the editing, there's the scripting, there's all of the tagging and the search engine optimization. Like, it is so time consuming that I wanted to be somewhere where the barrier to entry was higher, because I knew I could outwork anyone. And so I also really enjoyed being on camera and talking and showing my personality and having fun, goofy editing. And so with those two things, I thought, okay, that's perfect. Now, of course, I also did move into LinkedIn and cross promote there, because that is an extremely natural place to promote a job searching YouTube channel and job search content. And LinkedIn is quite a bit easier. And I've even put out free classes on how to really optimize your LinkedIn presence. But YouTube really was that place where I felt like I could build a long-term strategy. I will tell you, it did not come without blood, sweat, and tears.
Well, I mean, I'm putting together a YouTube channel. I probably started much later than you as well. And like, I have a guy, and that guy works hard, and there's a lot of pieces and there's a lot of money I put into it. Like, as you speak about barriers to entry, it's like you have thumbnail design, you're SEOing everything, then you're editing it, and it's like, okay, not everybody else is going to do this. So maybe if I go out there and I do something great, you're going to stand out. And so I can definitely appreciate that. I'd be curious, when did you start the YouTube?
When I started, my first video came out October of 2017.
Do you keep your first video published, or did you hide it? Because I've hidden some of them.
Oh. They're not cute.
I want to speak about this because, okay, I have this one story and I want to hear yours. Is I started a channel for Mindvalley back when I worked there, and it was an online marketing weekly recap. And I did 7 episodes on a camera that I never released because it was so terrible. But it got me ready to release number 8, and that's how I kind of did it. So I'd be curious to know, how were your first trials on YouTube?
Oh my gosh, I actually posted my outtakes from my first, I don't know, few videos, and that is also public on YouTube. And people go, "Oh, Madeline, I thought you were just naturally good at talking." And I said, "No, sweetie, that is practice and that is editing." And of course, now I can carry on this conversation with you, no problem. But we're years in. I have been talking about this for years. I am extremely trained now. And so that is something that you have to be able to ride that curve. And it's so easy to explain away that, oh, that person's just talented. They just have a natural talent. And that is not the case.
I'd be curious to know. So you posted your first YouTube videos, and then you started going. How much time did it take before you had something that you were like, oh, this is getting nice traction? Or did you have some instant success pretty early on?
For a while, maybe even it could have been 2 years, got so many comments of, why isn't this channel bigger? This content is the best on YouTube. Why isn't this channel bigger? And the reason it wasn't bigger was because you have to really learn every platform. I was given pretty poor advice, Jason. I was told, put out high quality content and be consistent. And I'm telling you right now, that's not the recipe to success. And I did take a couple of YouTube courses that were unhelpful. And then I took several YouTube courses after that were very helpful. And so that's another thing is even if you're investing money, now I'm someone who is a chronic coaching investing person. I'm always buying coaching programs. So that didn't, even though I've gotten burned a few times, it didn't just never stop me from getting back on the horse. But yeah, I did get burned by a few of those programs. And yeah, once I changed my strategy, it really helped me to not just put out quality content, but put out quality content people would actually see.
What do you think is a little nuance that's different from the original advice that you had to tweak?
I was building the content that I knew people needed when I needed to build the content that people wanted.
Ain't that the truth? Isn't it frustrating sometimes though?
Oh, it's extremely frustrating. That's why I have my coaching program, which is extremely successful, because the coaching program, I give them what they actually need, right? Like they are in it, they're getting what they need, and their transformations are remarkable. But you can't do that for social media. You won't get the views. You won't get the attention. You have to give them what they want.
So this is a constant push and pull, right? So because especially on YouTube now, I don't know how it was when you started, but like it seems now more than ever, like you're competing with some of the biggest attention grabbing strategists out there. And it's not like build it and they will come was the old philosophy in business. Now it seems there's a whole lot of marketing and sales methodology that needs to be applied just to pierce the veil of this. And let's not even introduce the fact that AI has multiplied the volume of things that are out there. How do you still continue to push the envelope in giving them what they want, but still making sure that it leads to what they need?
What I've found that's really important is you have to give them what they want, and then you have to help them see that they need more. So a lot of us have these blinders on and we don't actually understand our gaps. So if I was to show you some content that I know is a gap of yours, but you don't actually believe it is, you'll probably cut out in the first 2 minutes. You say, man, it's kind of a waste of my time. So I actually have to spend all this time educating you on why you care. Why do you care about reading a label in a grocery store of a package of a food? I'm trying to make you healthier, but maybe I have to educate you first of why that's important versus just jumping in and telling you how to read the label, that kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's building that bridge that I find is one of the art pieces, especially on social media, YouTube, whether it's even any of the other thing. There's like this balance of like entertainment and education. There's like this balance of entertainment and education. I'm always wondering, like, how much do you need to lean into the education side versus the entertainment side? Whereas like the entertainment might not cause the transformation. Is it a distracting consumption or is it still leading? And it sounds like you found the formula, which is like, if you're educating, making it entertaining, and then you have obviously everything on the coaching side that gives them how to actually transform. It's a very different audience, isn't it?
Yes. And I think everything that's educating should have an entertaining element to it, just because life is short and you want to make learning as fun as possible. But also there's an element of sometimes you do simply entertain, right? But that helps to get the person in the mindset, that helps to get the person to discover you. And then they dive in a bit deeper. They're like, oh, actually what Madeline is saying is actually pretty helpful. And I caught that video where she had HR professionals saying, promote or demote, do I ever read 2-page resumes? That was kind of entertaining. But now she's giving me insight as to why they answered that way and how I can change my resume and those types of things. So there is a balance, and I wish I could just do all the hardcore, like, let me just focus on the really helpful stuff, but there's only so many hours in a day, and you do have to address more of this entertainment aspect, or the things that people actually want and ask for.
You know, there's a saying that I talk a lot about in the concepts of selling with love, which is like, you have to learn the language that's required for people to understand the value that you want to give to them. So you have to kind of build that whole wrapping. I'd be curious to know, over the course of your career as a coach, you've obviously had all the competencies that came from your initial work that you've done in HR and in recruitment. That was the tangible things that you were able to educate people for. How much do you spend your time now either learning or doing things that are still related to the core of what you teach, versus having to learn things that are more related to sales, marketing, branding, that are more like on the business, but are not necessarily the core product anymore?
Man, that is an interesting question, because I feel like I have an MBA at this point as far as it comes to sales and marketing. I am a human resources professional at my core, but I am also a chief marketing officer. The amount I've learned about sales is more than I ever imagined in my life, and it's been thrilling. Like, I find it extremely interesting. And then on the other side, I'm constantly talking to professionals who are hiring every day, who are seeing the job market up close. I also keep in contact with my former clients, because I think that that's some of the most interesting data, because I look at people who I've helped have these amazing transformations, they career change, or they land this incredible job. And then a couple years later, they'll do another job search, and they're using the same approaches as before. Okay. And they are even more qualified for the things they're going for. But how is the job market responding to them now? And that has been extremely fascinating for me to really hear that, and then pass it along to my current clients of, okay, here's what's working now. And so that's been really fun. Is I'm very much on the bleeding edge of marketing and sales, because especially marketing is changing by the absolute minute. You need to be always up to date on the next platform, on the next way that Google has changed the way that they do ads, or whatever it is. You need to be on there. So it's like, having a marketing degree from 15 years ago is your marketing degree needs to be happening every week. And then, as well as being updated on the job market, also needs to be happening every week. And so that's been, I am a voracious learner, so it's been really fun for me.
Would you ever consider yourself somebody that loved sales when you first got started in this whole journey?
Oh, no way. No way. That wasn't even top of mind. And also, I'm a human resources professional, and I'm an educator, right? So it took me a long time to understand sales, because I'm just like, okay, I'll just tell you, like, here's how to solve this. And like I said, that doesn't work. Just telling people how to solve things, they won't solve it. You have to really meet them where they are, and everything that you teach, Jason, all those things are actually to serve the end person. Like the reason you go through all those hoops is so that that person can have that transformation. And that took me a long time to learn.
This is why I'm absolutely loving the conversation here, because if you usually think of somebody in HR, the last thing you would associate is sales. And it's something I remember in our first conversation. We talked about why sales is so important, because the process of getting a job is a sales process. And now I love that we're having this conversation around your journey, being a coach, being a self-made entrepreneur in the space, building a social media, and you've fully embraced the sales and marketing. And I think that's something that a lot of people resist when they get into business. They're like, I'm just going to work on my product. Oh, this whole marketing and sales stuff, I hate it. It's like a nuisance. But in your case, it's like you just said, okay, another thing to learn. You've went into it. You started moving towards it. I'm sure you've had to make some massive changes in how you approach things based on how YouTube changes, how TikTok changes. My God, TikTok might be off of America at some point. And I know that's a big place that a lot of people built a following. So I'm seeing all these changes, but you're fully embracing it. And this is such a core message I'm trying to get people to understand and appreciate, is like, hey, this could be fun. You can learn some incredible things, and you see the results that it brings. it lights me up. You might notice I'm also feeling very excited because you're a testament to what I'm trying to get a lot of people to understand. And I think you're doing it so well. So I just want to acknowledge that.
Thank you. I will say I have helped a lot of people who want to be career coaches and all of that. And I will say that really one of the big differences is exactly that unwillingness to learn. Like a lot of times they'll outsource. They'll say, oh, I'm going to hire this firm or something to do all of my marketing or whatnot. And that's not necessarily a bad approach. But what I found in my business, every time I did not fully learn the position of my staff before handing it off, I got burned. Like I know everything that's happening in my organization. I've hired people who are better at it than me for sure, but I am hands in the mix, making sure I'm really understanding it, because if you don't understand why things are happening in your business or how you are going to get burned, you're going to make bad decisions and you can't keep running away from it.
I find myself having to do things quite similarly. I'm also not at a scale necessarily where I don't need, like, I can still find myself playing all the roles myself because I'm not at a scale where it's like a massive corporation. Do you find like there's going to be a threshold? Do you think there's going to be a point where you're like, oh my God, I wouldn't be able to kind of learn that position? Is that at a certain size of company or of time that you'd be like, oh my God, I probably can't put my hand in some new of these positions, new initiatives? Because I'm thinking Fortune 500s, you can't play every position, right? When you're at some sort of leadership level.
I agree. I think maybe what I more mean is at a very individual level of like the daily tasks. You're right, that's impossible. But understanding strategically, how does your customer service address customers? How does your sales team capture, new clients? How does your development team think about the infrastructure? Like you should know those things. You should be able to have some sort of level of a conversation about it, and you should take an interest in it because it all fits together and it's all super important. But like I said, I have people on my team. I could not do what they do. They are much better than me, and they do know things at a deeper level than I do. But the fact that I take an interest in exactly what they're doing, and sometimes I avoid it. I will admit it. Sometimes I do avoid it, but I've just learned it's so important. And then you're able to see, ooh, I can consolidate. I can save money here. I can, use this other solution. And that's just helped me so much.
Yeah, I've done the same. Went in areas which is like, oh, if I can just forget about this piece because this person's taking care of it. The idea of it is nice. The execution of it doesn't bring as many results. The way you speak about how you're working with your team to me shows a high leadership capability to be able to delegate effectively. And I'd be curious if that was something that was innate to you, or were there some areas where like, oh my God, the first time delegating, was it difficult? Were you like disappointed that people are maybe only at 80% of your 100%? Like, was that a part of the business that happened?
Jason, I will say, and this is very vulnerable, is I was a much better leader when I was working for someone else. When I became a CEO of my own business, emotion takes over. So every dollar I make and every dollar I spend on talent, it hurts in a way. I shouldn't think about it that way, but especially when it started, it was like, and if someone disappointed me, it's like, whoa, it just, the bottom line of the business is so directly impacting your personal life and your vision for the future of the business that you can make, or I won't even say you, I made some worse decisions than if I was less emotional. So there's really a benefit to hiring other people to make some of these decisions, or what I've done is I've hired a lot of coaches to help me make these decisions where they are more objective. But over time, I've gotten so much better about it. And it does play into a lot of hiring. So hiring the right people. Now, part of hiring is me personally being extremely clear about what the business needs. So even if I hire the best person, if I'm unclear to them, they're not going to succeed. And so me getting really clear about the business and then hiring really amazing people And I'm very proud to say that at this moment, my team is all A players, all just firing on all cylinders. And that took me a bit to do because of the emotional barriers that come with being a business owner.
Oh, yeah. You're reminding me of a lot of things I need to do better. I've had so many times I've brought someone on board and I'm not even clear on exactly what I need them to do. And I'm just like crossing fingers and like, but I believe in them. And it's usually resulted in subpar performance, and it's not to anybody's fault but my own. And that's still an element I'm working on and trying to do better. I think I'm a very nice person, but I think I can be more effective at being more clear, more effective at really defining job description. And quite frankly, I think the experience of the types of positions you've had would benefit for a lot of early stage entrepreneurs. Are you someone who's an advocate of like building like a whole org chart, even if you're your own entrepreneur, of all the key positions and roles at the start? Was that something that you've done, or do you have certain strategies you've used to help you hire your first people?
I will say it's tough, right? Because I didn't come from a teeny weeny company, right? I came from bigger companies and all of that. So it really is a different mindset. I do think it's important to know where your hiring is going. And with the help of some business coaches who have done the exact thing that I'm doing now, which you'll see a pattern in when you look at my success, it's on the shoulders of giants. And that is one of my secrets is I invest. The number one place that I invest is in my own self and in my own education. And that's reflected definitely in the number of dollars I've spent. And that's the quickest way to get ahead. Like, I love that folks are listening to your podcast. I love that people are reading your book and all of that. And like, that's a step in that direction of keep investing in yourself, because there's nothing more important than that.
It's something that's been a theme throughout the conversation, but I found it interesting early on. You've mentioned that you've hired some, for example, we were talking about YouTube, and you've had some advice that people have given you that was not necessarily the right advice. And one of the things that I find is quite intimidating in the marketplace today, if you're looking for a coach, is there's a lot of coaches. At least it seems that way. Mind you, I am in Bali, which is like the capital of life coaches, but I'd be curious to know, where do you go and how do you find yourself being able to pick out what would be a quality coach for what you need? Are there a certain place that's ideal for people to look at, or maybe it's events that you have to go to? How do you source that?
What is really tricky about coaching is there isn't some sort of portal where everyone is reviewed and everyone. It's very fragmented, and so it is a lot of word of mouth. It is a lot of watching people's content. That's why I put out so much content, because I know that for people to take the step with me to choose me as their coach, they need to be able to trust me. And I think that the best way to do that is to have people hear you speak authentically, and they can get a bit of your style, because even if they agree with everything I say, maybe my personality doesn't match with them or whatnot, at least they get to see that. And so I think one of the things that I have been burned by several programs, and I have had great success with others. And one of the key factors is you typically want to go to the top. You want to go up as high as you can possibly afford. And that when I said I paid a lot of money, I did. And a lot of these coaches will hire other coaches to coach you, or they will be really inexpensive. But you think, oh, I'm cutting corners and all of that. And not saying that when they hire other coaches, those coaches aren't great, but you just have to understand what you're getting. And what I found is, like, when I would go to the top, so I've done a lot of like group coaching programs, because typically if you are going for someone who is really in demand, there's no way you're going to get one-on-one time with them unless you want to pay thousands and thousands of dollars per hour. And that's worked famously for me. So my thing is I've stopped cutting any sort of corners when it comes to choosing the people who are going to give me the shortcut. And I have constantly, 10x'd my investment.
That's some really good advice and reassurance for anybody who's maybe hesitant in investing in themselves, just understanding how that will pay the dividends. There isn't a magical place. I was hoping you were going to say, oh, you just go to www.madelineapprovedcoaches.com. No? But
I should make it, right?
actually, there's an idea in itself, but I agree with you. I think one of the best ways is to look out for the content. But on the flip side, I've also seen, because again, we talked about the core skills, your experience, HR, recruitment, talent. You have that as a base, and you've learned the marketing and sales. You've understand the power that it brings, the attention that you need to build that trust, etc. And hand in hand, you're an amazing coach. But I've seen the dark side, which is just learn the marketing and sales. Now I can paint the picture that I'm amazing, but maybe everything that I have isn't rock solid. And that's when you talk about being burned, that's probably the types of people who have just been good at marketing, sell you an expensive program, but don't deliver the results. Any words of wisdom on how to detect the bullshit?
That is such a good question, Jason, because unfortunately, a lot of the people who come into my coaching program are ones who've already spent thousands of dollars on coaching, and they've gotten totally burned. And I see what that coach has produced for them, and I say, yeah, this is not it. Because again, I come from a space, career coaching, job search coaching, which has an extremely low barrier to entry. Oh, I've done a job search. Let me help you with your job search. And anyways, so it's really, really rough. And I did invest in a program that was, this woman, she was, I would say to this day, probably the best saleswoman I've ever seen. Like, this woman was magic. You watch her, she is magnetic. You think that if you invest in her, your whole world is going to change. And I took her program, and she did not really understand instructional design. I have an instructional design background. She didn't really, every time I ask her a question, she would be like, well, that's never happened to me, so I don't know, because she's only built her business one way, and she really didn't have other experiences to pull from and all of this. And I've continued to stay in her orbit, and I hope people don't try to guess who it is, because I've had quite a few coaches, so it's probably not who you're thinking of, because I very publicly talk about some of my coaches, and I appreciate them. So don't guess, but yeah, I have stayed in her orbit because I'm like, dang, her marketing emails, her presentations are still amazing. It's just once you get into the other side, she's like, all right, later, good, nice knowing you.
It is unfortunately a very common thing. I've had my own experiences seeing people that sell that way. And again, I'm glad you've seen the silver lining, which is there's amazing sales and marketing tactics and techniques and processes you can absorb from that. But when you know what you offer is more than what you ask in return, you can use that to get the attention and to steer people into the programs that you're building, that you're putting in the love and you care for people. So I'm very happy we were able to see that, hey, it does exist. You have to be careful out there. Do your due diligence, take some risks. And one thing I do find for a lot of these programs is there's often a very generous refund policy for taking the initial leaps. And unless it's an outright scam, which you should be doing enough research to detect if that's the case, I find it's more helpful if you take a leap of faith. You buy the program. If it has a refund policy, you get to go on the other side and see what it's like. And I think that's one of the ways that I would suggest people to take more action, to try more things, and to give things a chance. Madeline, we went in a few different directions, but I'm so having fun in this conversation that we're having. I know that you are having a book, but it's coming out next year. It's going to be released with Penguin Random House. You've done a lot of book publishing as well in the past. And so I'd be curious to know, when did books become part of your vision, your marketing mix, and how much has it helped you as a business decision to decide, I'm going to write a book now?
Yeah, it was super thrilling to get this book deal with Penguin Random House. And it is the book that I really hope is career defining at this point. I mean, I really poured my all into it. It walks through the entire job shopping mentality and strategy, where you go from job searching to hoping companies will deign to give you attention, to job shopping, where opportunities are coming your way. You're being selective. Companies are competing for you. which to a lot of people sounds too good to be true. But to me, with all my clients, that's a daily occurrence. And it really is a shift of the way you work. So I'm so excited to put that all into a book and share that with everyone in 2025. And my previous books have actually been very, very tactical. So I have a book called Fill in the Blank Job Hunt, which is just all of the email templates you would need in the job search, which has gotten such tremendous feedback of, oh my gosh, these emails are amazing. It basically sped up my job search so fast. I didn't have to think about it, because that's a gap I saw for so many people, is they would say something, they would take more action in the job search if only they knew the rules of the game and how to play it. And so that was really helpful. And then I have another ebook on basically all of the formulas for the top 10 interview questions, which has led to a lot of people acing interviews famously. So those are very tactical, but this book is the strategy. This book is going to basically change the way people job search for the rest of their career.
Now that has a hook that gets me very interested. I'm very excited. More than likely, I would love to have a chance to have you come back whenever we have that book coming out. We can promote it. We can support it. As I've mentioned in this interview, I have much appreciation for your competencies within your background, your leadership skills, your sales and marketing abilities to put yourself out there. You've built something incredible, and it's been just a fun conversation having you so far on this show. For a returning time, I do have a question I do ask everybody who comes on, which I want to ask you as well, which is, you are on the Selling with Love podcast. What does selling with love mean to you?
Selling with love means that you are really trying to help whoever you're talking to in the best way that you can serve them. It usually, if it's the right match, selling something to someone is the most compassionate thing you could do, because especially if you're doing something where it could transform their life, it's just a tough leap to make, and there's lots of questions. And so serving them in that way is such a pleasure and such an honor, and that's selling with love.
Madeline, I love it. It was a pleasure having you on. For everybody tuning in, we've touched a few topics, but for me, there are so many nuggets to take away from here. For one, do not neglect the core skill of whatever. If you're going into any kind of business, that there's a core product with some unique skill sets that you've developed, or at least a formula you've put together that has a competitive advantage that lets you deliver something that is excellent. That is one of the foundations that allows you to really go out there, have confidence, have competence. They go hand in hand. And you've seen Madeline having that background has served her immensely to see the gaps and build for a niche and an audience that were starved for it, because she's witnessed it and was so much in pulse with the market. Choosing the medium that you want to go out there with your content. Go out there, try. You're going to be a little silly at the beginning. Don't be ashamed. Taking the action is going to be much more important, and then you can find the support and grow from there. Took 2 years before the YouTube got some traction, but the fact that 2 years of practice and content being built out there is the momentum that most people give up. And if you keep going, you see that you get better and you're able to pierce through the veil at that point. We've talked a lot about how you can repurpose this and find a lot of coaches along the way. Madeline, big proponent on finding people that have done it, so you can cut the corner, and not cut the corners, but cut the time it takes for you to get the results. You're maybe making some mistakes if you find a coach out there, but fact is if you keep investing in yourself and you're paying attention to the ones out there that are providing great ideas for the things that you need, you'll be able to get to that level faster, and you'll learn through the process. And even I have to speak of my own experience with coaching, where I spent $20,000+ in real estate coaching. It was a complete scam, but I've learned so much from it, and I wouldn't be here today if I wouldn't have taken that misstep. So every step happens to be a step forward, if you ask me. We've talked also about how to get started with hiring, some of the mistakes. There was just a jam-packed episode, and had such fun doing it in the process. Madeline, once again, thank you so much for sharing. It's good to see you again, good to talk to you again, and congrats on the book. I know it's an endeavor, and I can't wait to speak to you again to learn more about the strategies for job shopping.
Thanks so much, Jason.
Thank you so much for listening to the Selling with Love podcast. We have some previous episodes you can tune into right here. And if you prefer the short form content where you get to the point in under 10 minutes, we do have a ton of clips from our best episodes that are being shared on this channel as well. So pick which one supports you the most. And of course, thank you for liking, subscribing, and of course, selling with love.